in person, and I have to make a confession, and that is one of the good things about lockdown was when there were technical difficulties, Tam and I could just hit pause. Or often what we end up doing is we'd wake Ethan up at maybe like 9:30, rush to him and say, we've made a mess in the clip and we need to remove something. So everything would come out really perfect. So this morning we were really nervous, Tam and I, about being here in person and for all the many things that can go wrong. We are recording the sermon for those that are not able to come to church yet, so please excuse that little thing happening here as well. But we do want to give people an opportunity to be in the virtual ministry as well. Our readings from Holy Scripture today ask us to consider God's perspective on what it feels like to be in a relationship with us. God's complete commitment, care, and faithfulness is likened to a farmer planting a vineyard. For anyone that's ever tried to plant something, I have and failed miserably, what we know is that it's painstaking work. It requires dedication and constant attention. Each day we have to check, is there enough soil? How's the water? Is there enough sunlight? And this creates an intimacy between us and the thing that we are nurturing. And there's hope involved here too, an expectation of a moment of some kind of harvest. And our Isaiah reading and the psalm explore this metaphor of God as the farmer and the people of Israel as the vineyard. And here we see a divine heart broken, crushed by the outcome of all that love and care that's gone into his people. Jesus picks up this metaphor in his third response to a question from the scribes and the Pharisees regarding the source of his authority. But as always, he places a twist on it and focuses not so much on the fruit that is harvest, but on the tenants into whom God has given the care of this vineyard to. And again, we see here there is a breaking down of that relationship, and a broken heart is what the owner brings. But my friends, what exactly is breaking God's heart? Well, we read that the wider Isaianic context indicates that God's heartbreak comes from the people's willingness to trample upon the powerless, and if that's what it takes for them to get their own comfort. And our psalm is an intricate poem expressing the divine pain at the people's failure to live out a relationship with God. And the parable in Matthew describes a refusal to embrace the accountability that God demands and an arrogant disregard for divine authority. Now, all of us know that relationships require an investment. And more importantly, am I right, relationships are a two-way street. You literally can't be in a relationship with someone who doesn't want to be in a relationship with you. It makes it kind of awkward. They start calling you stalker or something like that. So what our readings also highlight is that our relationship with God is not an abstract idea. It's an experience. And we are intimately connected to God through our relationships with those around us and what God has created through God's creation itself. This is the truth, my friends, of the dual commandment of love, that love for God and love for others cannot be separated. They are expressions of one another. They are experiences of one another. Paul picks up on the nature of our relationship being a journey. There's always a starting point and a hoped-for end point. But relationships are built and destroyed in the in-between time, in the moment by moment. And we have to have a radical commitment, a willingness to suffer loss, a desire to compromise, and most importantly, stay the course, to not check out. Now, I don't know about you, but 2020 has truly been a journey. And my children like to say, Mom, this year showed us flames. And each of us have experienced this time differently. But perhaps like me, you've also experienced the pressures that it's placed on our most intimate relationships. The hard lockdown that forced a level of intimacy that was not even usual in our domestic living arrangements. And the aspirations and the hopes for 2020 and what could be were in many instances dashed. And there was also a loss of people that we loved, and an inability to grieve the way we do. The pressure of finding the balance between work and family. And for me personally, figuring out how to minister on the virtual platform. Yet God remains engaged, God remains committed, continues to nurture us in the place that we may find ourselves, calling us into deeper accountability for what God has entrusted to us, inspiring us and helping us find ways to live in these strange times and storms, and giving us glimpses of rest and perhaps spaces of refreshment. So I want to end my friend with a fervent desire that I'm sharing with you. It is my desire that as we go into this new normal, we don't forget the ways in which God has sought to grow in us, to do a work in us through this period that we have not been able to meet in person. Accepting and surrendering to these works that God has sought in us. Seeking to be more accountable for the things that God has entrusted us with. And that we stay the course. That we also give others the grace that we seek ourselves. Because as we know, intimacy in relationships doesn't come overnight. It comes from time spent together. In Jesus' teaching, there was a fundamental reminder that everything belongs to the Creator. The Creator owns everything, and we are only tenants of the time and the talents and the resources that God has chosen to bless us with. We are asked to use that for the greater good of the kingdom. And so as we connect to this fundamental truth, both individually and as a community of faith, there's both a promise and a call in it. A promise that God will never leave us. A promise that God's faithfulness and commitment stays firm. A promise that God will provide everything we need to be good tenants in the kingdom. And a call to give ourselves completely to this relationship, to grow in openness to the heart of God by being open to those around us, learning to trust God more today than we did yesterday. And maybe that will inspire prayers to God, for God to be an active person in our lives, an active presence. I want to end with something that has given me great comfort over these times. As you can hear, the birds, the peacocks, the ducks have completely taken over the site. So slowly, we'll have to compete a little with them for sharing that space. But the thing that has helped me most over this lockdown period, and I hope that it helps you as you go into this new normal, is learning to trust God, and when I'm faced with something, knowing what belongs to my pay grade and what belongs one who is in charge. So the parish council will tell you, I often say to them when they come to me with something, I'm really sorry, that's above my pay grade. I'll go and pray and